Hello, everybody. Jeff Mason and David GAULE here, episode 63, December 31st, 2020. Man, can't wait to get this year behind us. So, any rate, we have David GAULE here. Welcome, everybody. Hey, if you want to subscribe to the show, we'd love it. If you're looking at the screen on YouTube, bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a little pinwheel down there. Just hover your cursor over that pinwheel, subscribe. We'd love to have you join every week. It'll basically just give you a notification that a new show's out. Nothing more. We don't pester you. Just a way to get connected at 7:30 every Thursday morning when our shows air. So, David GAULE, O'Fallon Nutrition, would love you to say hello and tell a little bit about yourself.
Well, hey, Jeff. Hello.
How are you?
As you said, I'm David GAULE. I own O'Fallon Nutrition in O'Fallon, Missouri. It's a health food, vitamin, dietary supplement kind of a store that reflects stores that used to exist in the 70s, 80s, 90s, before you had just sort of the sports nutrition-centric stores. And been there 18 years. Actually, we're in our second location, but we've existed 18 years. And really, it's been a great business. It's been fascinating. It's had all sorts of changes over the years and ups and downs. And, of course, we've seen all sorts of ups and downs with the economy and the whole situation around it. But and the whole time we've been, really fortunate to be in a thriving, growing, medium city that I love.
Great. Well, that's awesome. And you're originally from Omaha, Nebraska, so we do know that. So, well, very exciting. Thank you so much. And folks, we're going to tell everybody the coordinates and how you can get a hold of O'Fallon Nutrition via online and store location and so forth at the end of the show. But he's located in O'Fallon, Missouri. And David and I have an interesting introduction together. We met probably back in 2007, maybe even a little bit before. But back in 2007, I had a certain need that I had to address, and my wife had been going to David's store, and she dragged me. And I say drag because I think this is part of this show, is to just open up the valves on understanding nutrition and wellness a little bit better through the supplemental end of things and through, just how we look at nutrition, if you will. But 2007. So I was having 3 to 4 sleepless nights a week. I was having all kinds of indigestion problems, and it was just, nothing would help it. I tried everything I could, and in desperation went into his store. And David took the time to sit with me and talk with me about my situation. Really explained at that point, at that age of my life, that enzymes inside the body after 40, sometimes, if I remember correctly, they just sometimes you need to supplement those digestive enzymes in your own body in the form of supplements, and that's maybe what was going on here. And so that, combined with a daily dose of probiotics, I mean, I had been going through this for 4 or 5 years, and man, I did this. I maybe 3 days into it, everything went away, and folks, I can tell you to this day, I have never experienced that digestion problem since 2007, and I'm still on. Digestive enzymes, I don't do as much probiotics, every day. So anyway, it was a very interesting way for us to connect, and I really enjoyed your staff and the educational process and walking me through my progression into understanding, nutrition, supplements, organic, non-GMO, and so forth. So we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about stuff like that because, as the COVID pandemic has alerted all of us to health, has alerted all of us to wellness. What should we do? How should we do it? And we're going to kind of unpack a little bit of that today and see what David can share with us. But there's also the entrepreneurial end, which is great because he's been in business 18 years. He's got a great story, and we're going to tap into that. So just to start off, I mean, how did you first get interested in wellness, or nutrition?
The quick version of the summary is that my dad was a classic 80s style health nut, but a really clever one who had a degree in biology, and he was on track to become a physician, and life circumstances intervened, and he ended up becoming a really good computer programmer, actually. However, my mom had Crohn's disease, and during that time, it was right after college, I believe, for him, and he was working in the emergency room, kind of preparing himself for trying to go into medical school, et cetera. And he started researching ways to help her, and he kept stumbling into nutrition. And this was not anything at that point that he was into at all. He was famous for eating multiple Whoppers at a time, that kind of thing. A big, tall, skinny guy that could do whatever he wanted. And to summarize, basically, he ended up stumbling into nutrition, and he would even run it across physicians that he worked with at the emergency room, and he tells me stories of them kind of poo-pooing it, so to speak. And he'd come across, there's a study on vitamin C, and it was really intriguing, and that's a bunch of baloney. Well, anyways, he continued to get into it, and tried to help my mom with her situation, and they did have some success with that, but life keeps going. They divorced for other reasons. However, I would spend summers with my dad, and literally that was his special interest, was nutrition. And I ended up being kind of a chubby adolescent, which was a perfect opportunity for us to talk about nutrition a lot. But that could have been a lot more negative than it sounds. And he ended up, I kind of became aware of the concept of money in elementary school and liked it, and was also sort of a precocious reader. So he combined both of those, and around 6th grade, he paid me during the summer to read nutrition books.
Wow.
I swear. We didn't have much to do. It was a one-bedroom apartment in Dallas. I had summer camp, and he had a black and white TV with an antenna, and that was about it. And,
wow.
And then an apartment full of nutrition books. So I start reading nutrition books, some of which are kind of famous books from the 80s and 90s and such.
Wow.
And that actually fascinated me. And I was super intrigued by this idea that you could use nutrition, or really what we're saying is chemistry, to sort of maybe enhance yourself. Yeah. And as a kid that didn't consider myself particularly athletic or anything, it was like, wow, this is really a way to address these issues. Yeah. And it goes on and on and on, and I went in and out of being into it, but in college it was definitely a side interest along with other things, and I at one point worked in a health food store during the summer between freshman and sophomore year, and found it fascinating, although really complex for the size of the business. After college, we'll come around to the entrepreneurial stuff. Yeah. Basically, I was kind of a very entrepreneurial young guy, along the lines of the English gentleman that you just had recently. Yeah. Anyways, there was an ad that said health food store for sale in the back of a newspaper called The Healthy Planet that I picked up at Whole Foods, and ended up talking to my buddies. This was a month after we graduated college, and one of my buddies said, "You should do it." So we called this phone number, and we ended up going and visiting it. Wow. It was this little failing vitamin shop, and that was O'Fallon Nutrition, and we bought it and started to run with it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Hey, we're going to ask you to snug your mic up a little bit closer to you. We're kind of going in and out on there, and I want to make sure we get some good. Yeah, very cool. So did you go to college for anything related to nutrition?
Yes and no. I went to college. I got a degree in anthropology, actually, from Washington University here in St. Louis. Okay. And anthropology can definitely get into nutrition, in some cases quite a bit. You look at nutrition in teeth and things like that. However, I took 3 specific nutrition courses at WashU, so there's no minor or degree there, but I actually was interested and found them. The anthropology department had 2 really good ones by this Professor Montgomery, and then the night school at WashU University College. Each semester we were allowed to take 1 night school class, and there was a really good older PhD dietitian woman who had these great courses, and I took her 2 classes that she had. But then everything else was self-taught at that time. And then around the time that you came in was the time that I was finishing up this something called the Certified Nutritionist Program, and that was created by actually in the background the people that created Certified Financial Planners, and they wanted to create a certified, unbiased nutrition sort of consultant. And I did that program, but that whole idea didn't succeed the way that Certified Financial Planners did. But I graduated, or I got this diploma in comprehensive nutrition from this school called American College of Health Sciences. And that was like a 2-year thing. It's federally, I found the only program that was federally accredited. So those courses are actually like transferable to another university. I had proctored exams where I could not take open book exams. I had to write 2 20-page papers on 2 test subjects, so to speak, anonymously, which ended up being 2 of our customers of our store. And then I had to take an exam that was, I think it was 600 questions, but it was over all 6 of the courses that made up the program. But anyway, nonetheless, it's not a full master's or something along those lines. But nutrition doesn't always have a clear path, and that's something else you can get into.
And that's just if you could snug that mic up a little close. Yeah, I don't know where it's just don't want it to fade in and out. But so when you I guess this is a question I have. I would imagine a lot of listeners and viewers have it too. You hear nutrition and nutritionists, and you hear wellness and that posture of wellness. Do the two, in your opinion, blend together, or are they separate entities, or are they part and parcel, of each other?
So one of the ways I think of it is when we talk specifically and we start using the word nutrition, I start associating that in my head with biochemistry. And so when we get into the topic of nutrition, I think that we kind of up the ante on the technical side of things, whereas wellness can be very technical. Wellness can encompass nutrition, but wellness is also a larger umbrella that incorporates psychology, exercise, spirituality, everything. So nutrition would be a subset of that, but then also just this dichotomy of whether or not you're going really technical or whether you're going sort of more philosophical.
Okay, great answer. And that's kind of what I was searching for, is that, we hear that wellness is an encapsulated, or an umbrella that encapsulates so much.
Sure.
And nutrition, I view the word nutrition, correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of look at it as that word that for so many of us goes in one ear and out the other. And we've heard it as a kid.
Sure.
We read it on labels and we just go, oh, that's kabuki theater or whatever, that's hogwash. And really, as I listened to you over the years and interacted with your store, and my wife is super into it, I've really understood nutrition is really something that the medical community has avoided addressing in a lot of their remedy-oriented or their remedies that they suggest. I think that the wellness community has probably looked a lot at the exercise and the spirituality. And when the real nutrition comes into play, it seems like a much smaller sliver of the population really grasps onto that and understands it.
Yeah, so I definitely consider myself sort of an ambassador of nutrition. I'm really convinced it's like the most important science. And I almost feel that as a species, the human race is really missing the boat on this. Everything depends on nutrition. Everything else we're talking about depends on nutrition. First, nutrition can't come last. As one of my favorite scientists that I used to follow, Dr. Michael Colgan, would say, we're a hairy bag of water. We're a sack of chemicals. Now, that can be animated through spiritual means, et cetera. You can get into all that, but on a basic processes level, we're literally biochemistry at work on a moment-to-moment basis. And all of that biochemistry is fueled by the compounds that we bring into our body. So along with air and along with water, I mean, nutrition is just absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about so many of the things that so many things people are afflicted with, now understanding that the centrality of that repair or remedy is found in the gut.
Sure.
It's, it is.
So many things.
There's so many things that are discovered in that gut, which is all being fed by the nutrition that's going in. And then you look at I had a young man on. It was a fascinating interview recently with Jimmy Clare, and Jimmy, has really had a calling in life to to really go out and be a spokesman for autism, but being a spokesman for encouraging autistic, those in and out of the spectrum, that it's nutrition, it's exercise that can lead to a quality life, even though there's no cure for autism right now. And, so you start to realize, and then, the arguments are, why is there such a rise in autism? I mean, is it coming from, is it coming from this or that? And I think, we don't know exactly why there's a rise in so many of these human conditions, but, so many of the fingers seem to be pointing at nutrition. Am I right or wrong on that?
Sure. At the very least, that nutrition plays a really big role in it. And even if you set aside the super difficult question of causation, and to what degree nutrition's involved in that, which is probably involved to some degree. But then I know on the intervention side of things that there's a lot of research going on with nutrition, and a lot of it's been pretty promising with autism, and also a lot of research on physiological and biochemical issues going on within the nervous system, for example, of somebody with autism, down to the level of specific neurotransmitters, having higher or lower levels, and how can nutrition interplay with that, cell membranes, and how lipids such as omega-3s influence how those cell membranes function, genetic abnormalities that can contribute to the body having an issue with using a specific nutrient, such as with MTHFR mutations, where a person can't use folic acid in its normally provided form. So you have all sorts of things like that, and a tremendous amount of research. And then we didn't even touch on the gut, which we'll just mention as a big issue there. So for sure.
Interesting.
And again, like, you can't grow a baby without nutrition. If we think of a baby, if we're going to try to make this point of how important is nutrition really, all right, I've got a baby. What ingredients does this baby need to thrive? It needs love. But let's say I just give this baby love, but nutrition is food. So let's say I don't feed it. Well, it's not going to live very long, right? There's only like 4 or 5 things that we can withhold from that baby, and it's not going to thrive. And nutrition's one of them that is literally required. And then we all know with babies, without having to explain it in detail, that we all have a basic understanding that the quality of that formula or the breast milk or whatnot that goes into that baby has an impact on the health of that baby and its development. So we all understand this underneath the surface.
No, it's fascinating to see that there's so many answers found in the understanding, a better understanding of nutrition. Even inflammation. There's so many autoimmune diseases out there that are, that where is that inflammation coming from? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but more often than not, we're discovering in our, especially my wife's research into it, is it's coming from food, Sure. There's a lot of inflammatory responses to food. And on a fundamental level, there's a lot of research and there's science that basically shows that we have some level of inflammation every time we eat. Just in reaction to processing the food itself. And then for various reasons, perhaps you react to gluten, perhaps sugar has an inflammatory effect on you, which it's generally regarded as having, or perhaps you're eating a really high proportion of inflammatory fats. It plays a massive role. And also, the when we don't eat, then that's another method of possibly reducing inflammation. Oh, really? So doing fasting was reduced inflammation? Sure. And so, I mean, folks can Google that. You don't have to take my word for it. But basically via the mechanism of your not, processing food, as a result, the immune response to that food goes away. And so you're less inflamed. Interesting. But obviously you don't want to just sit there and not eat. So well, I mean, fasting. Ask your doctor before you do anything like that. For sure. But, there's so many people that go in and out of this fasting program. Yeah, I'm quite into it right now. Wow. Interesting. So, something that I've discovered, and it plays into nutrition, but it's so basic, everyone, and your staff. By the way, if you're in O'Fallon, Missouri, and you go into his store, got a phenomenal staff. We've been dealing with Amanda for years. You got Summer, Cassie, you got Dalton, you got some other folks. We've certainly enjoyed your staff over the years.
Oh, thank you.
Great, and they really help out. And I suffered from gout. Gout appeared in my life maybe 4 years ago.
Oh, sure.
And I tried battling it the best I could, but I ended up having to, just after 2.5 years trying, and I tried everything. I ended up going to allopurinol, the only medicine I take, and it's worked wonders. But the process, going into your store, Amanda just blew me away one day, telling me that the amount of people in the United States that don't understand water intake on a daily basis, and the amount of people that don't drink enough water is just astronomical. And that is one of the main causes of gout, is that really, when you look at it, so many relationships of people that have gout and low water intake, they marry up. And you just have to really flush those, purines out of your body. And I mean, it's amazing. But talk to us about water. What's the importance of water in nutrition?
Well, I mean, water is carrying that biochemistry around our body. It's the medium, inside of our cells. The cells are not little balloons filled with air, with little organelles separated with spaces between them. There's fluid in there. I believe it's called cytoplasm, which is cellular fluid. And so, as I said, we're a hairy bag of water. And so if you want those things to function properly, then there has to be an appropriate amount of hydration. I think one of the trends, by the way, in hydration is the idea that all waters are not equal. And I don't mean that in some sort of, woo-woo way, but I mean in regards to things like their presence of minerals or what we might call electrolytes. And that has a big influence on how well the water is absorbed, potassium, sodium levels, that sort of thing. So I think that's the new trend, is to have the water work better. And that is related to its mineral content. And it's even related to maybe, like, when do you hydrate? Do you hydrate on a full stomach and accidentally dilute your stomach acid? Or do you perhaps, maybe hydrate a little harder between meals with the idea that maybe you absorb it a bit better?
Does that change with the person, or does it,
well, the like a general idea there is that, when you eat, you produce stomach acid, or what we might call digestive juices. And there's going to be, we mentioned enzymes, so there's going to be hydrochloric acid in there, and there's going to be amylase, the enzyme that breaks down starches, first of all. So if you dump a bunch of water in there, you dilute that hydrochloric acid primarily. And as a result, the contents of your stomach can become not acidic enough to actually go to the next step of digestion, which involves being released from the stomach. And basically, that process needs to happen in order to just simply absorb all that water that's mixed with that food and those stomach contents. So it's, I've had situations where I've had a full stomach and been sort of not feeling so great, and had a friend say, drink some water, and and I've got water, and it's like, no, you don't understand. If I do that right now, I'm just going to get heartber.
Interesting. So, and again, I think a lot of us,
but very important, water.
A lot of us probably think, though, in that case, when you got the full stomach and it hurt, to do, who knows? I can remember years past, that was the, let me wash this down. Let me help flush it through my system. Maybe it's just, not working.
Yeah. So from my perspective, maybe if we were to interview a naturopath or something like that, the issue would be that perhaps you're diluting your stomach acid significantly.
Interesting.
And I believe your stomach has to reach a pH of 2, which is pretty acidic, in order for the sphincter that's at the bottom of the stomach to open and release it into the first part of the small intestine. So there's actually something chemically that has to happen regarding pH. And let's say it's getting close to that. It's at a level, maybe it's at a pH of 3, which is fairly acidic in its own right, but not quite acidic enough for the stomach to release.
Interesting.
Now I drink this bottle of water. I dilute it down to a pH of 5, which is less acidic. And, now maybe that stuff's going to slosh around in my gut for a couple more hours. And then maybe that relates to the microbiome. You can, if you have microbiome issues in your stomach, for example, maybe there's fungus growing there and there shouldn't be. Now we're leaving food sitting there longer, basically providing a food source for perhaps microorganisms that we don't want to feed.
Interesting. Well, I mean, it's amazing how deep you can get into this. So, let's rewind to my situation, and I would imagine there's a lot of viewers that could benefit from your input here. How many people do you find today in 2020 coming into your store that have digestion issues and stomach issues that you recommend digestive enzymes and probiotics to? Is it a large percentage or a small percentage?
I mean, it's a very large percentage. Digestive issues are definitely one of the 2 or 3 primary categories that our store deals with, besides just general health and nutrition. So it's super common. All you have to do is look into any drugstore, a Walgreens or a CVS, and in the aisle where they have the over-the-counter medications. And what do we see? We see a massive, usually an entire aisle of digestive products. Yeah. And they all boil down to like 3 or 4 symptoms. You've got a ton of products for, you've got your heartburn, or what they might call indigestion. You've got your diarrhea. You've got your kind of general kind of nauseous or whatnot kind of yucky feeling that maybe a product like Pepto-Bismol was marketed to address. Yeah. But they're all basically related to issues with digestion. Yeah. There's the big theory within the world of nutrition or natural medicine or functional medicine, this idea that as folks age, that they often, and from what I understand, there's been research that's confirmed this, they often do not actually produce enough stomach acid. And that's actually regarded in cutting-edge nutrition as one of the primary mechanisms involved with the beginning of aging.
Interesting.
Because once your stomach acid production goes down, now your ability to absorb minerals, for example, goes down. We need stomach acid to dissolve food to the degree that we can actually absorb minerals, which are like rocks. What's calcium? It's limestone, right? Yeah. Well, what are you going to dissolve limestone with? Acid. So we keep getting this idea fed to us that we have too much acid, which can be the case with some people. But there's a lot of research out there regarding the idea that as folks age, they produce less stomach acid, or with certain conditions, they produce less stomach acid, and that there are issues associated with that. Final point I'll make regarding that is the known side effect with the medications that reduce stomach acid production. And that side effect for long term is hip fracture. And you can look that up.
Wow.
And I personally think that's related to issues with absorption of minerals.
Wow, interesting. Again, see all this just connects. It's amazing. Well, folks, I know I've just talked to a lot of people in my life, and digestive issues are huge. So, take a page out of this podcast and go talk to, if you're somewhere else in the country listening or the world, go speak to somebody like an O'Fallon Nutrition, where there's an educated staff and they can really spend some quality time talking through this and educating you on what digestive enzymes are. I think my first one I started with had cow bile in it, and the one I use now doesn't. Right. But I think initially, ox bile, so we
were trying to support some gallbladder function there as well. So you probably had something with some lipase, the enzyme that breaks down fats, and then you can actually get a dietary supplement that has ox bile in it. Which is an interesting point about our industry and about nutrition in general, particularly depending on certain countries sort of set up which things are medications and which things are supplements, et cetera, different from each other. The United States actually is relatively open with it. But the point I'm trying to make, though, is that you can buy ox bile as a supplement. Yeah. So a lot of folks aren't even aware that things like that exist, and you think, well, why the heck would somebody want it? And the general idea might be that certain people might have an issue where perhaps their gallbladder isn't functioning appropriately, and lo and behold, they may discover that they supplement with a little bit of bile, which is produced in the gallbladder. It may have some effects.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's wild.
And by the way, you don't even know it's not like you're sitting around and going, hey, let's eat some ox bile.
No.
You don't even know
Read
it's
about
in
it.
there.
You can ask. You can ask your physician about this stuff, and you can also look into other, functional medicine or other health practitioners that have the education, but also can lead you down these paths.
Well, thank you so much. And we're going to get into a little bit about the entrepreneurial side of the fence too, and some of the things you can help our listeners with. But I'm still fascinated with just some basic things to try to educate people on or help, just to illuminate because it really did. It changed my life, and we've been going there for since then and buy a ton of stuff from you.
It gets to the brain.
Yeah.
And the gut and all this and the nutrition and everything else, that's the other big thing that folks like us are into, which is, nervous system health. And so when you get into entrepreneurs, you're talking about performance.
Yep.
And so without going into it, I think nutrition is the cornerstone of performance.
Oh, well, I mean, and you know, I'm a big exercise nut too, and I just think,
Right.
you know, when you combine it all together,
They're the yin and yang of that.
Yeah. And I've always said that, you know, I'm a big runner, and I've always just said, I don't know what it is about the exhilaration after a nice workout and after a nice hard run, or even a longer run, is that I just feel like, you know, everything inside me has, you know, you've turned the engine switch on.
Right.
And now everything is cycling better. The blood, the you know, intestines, the you know, digestion, everything's just going about its business, kind of juiced up.
Right.
You know, and I just feel like the rhythm inside me is much healthier than those days I don't do. You know, and a lot of runners, they even talk about getting runner's depression where if they don't run, oh man, you know. And I've never gotten there, but you know, I definitely feel so nice. Like before I do podcasts, I love going out for a run right before I do, because I feel like I'm better.
The research on this stuff continues to be amazing. I mean, running is literally, or maybe you could say aerobic exercise is literally the best nootropic that exists. Nootropics are things that improve mental performance. And I just keep seeing headlines online regarding new studies on aerobic exercise and brain health, things like increasing, you know, formation of new connections. Et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting.
So I think scientifically you're more than on to something.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate that. What do you find more people coming into a store like yours for reactionary purposes versus proactive, or does it kind of?
Good question. It's a mix. However, if you're looking at maybe folks who are new to it, they fall into two categories. One category is sort of this category where they're being proactive, and maybe they are excited about an angle, whether it's anti-aging or improving their performance in the long run in some way. And then you've got other folks, maybe like yourself, that come in who have an issue that they're struggling to solve. And those are a lot of fun with nutrition because through our prism, a lot of issues are nutritionally related. Yeah. So anything I see physically going on with somebody, to me, I can interpret at least on some level through a nutritional, you know, mechanism or lens might be the better way to say it. And so, yeah, a lot of folks come in and maybe they have heartburn and it's never gone away. Maybe they have, you know, constipation and they haven't been able to address it correctly. Maybe they have mood issues that they're really struggling to overcome. Then you've got, you know, folks that are trying to address, you know, we have things like restless legs, folks coming in, you know, canker sores, ADHD, you know, you name it. And the beauty is that nutrition has things to say, you know, about all of those things.
So something I've noticed, I go in to do my shopping. I'm walking up and down the aisles. You know, you've got the staff talking with people in the aisles. And I love watching consumers, and it's been just a fascination of mine for years, watching that buying transaction, just kind of breaking it down, you know, and so I'm going to call it chin rubbers. I see a lot of chin rubbers, and they're like, you know, okay, I don't know if I really believe this, and I hear it. You know, I'm picking out supplements, so I want 400 IUs or I want this, and as I'm doing that, I'm hearing some of the conversations. I'm not intentionally eavesdropping, but I'm hearing it,
right?
And yeah, I don't know about that. And so, speak to somebody who. What would you say to a customer who has this apprehension level towards jumping into the pool on nutrition? What would you say to them?
There's a lot of fun angles and things I've said over the years to them. I mean, one thing is it's not good business for us to kill our customers, and it's not good business for us to make them sick. And we have, it's interesting. You want to get real crass with money. We don't really get paid unless we do a good job.
Right.
It's much better for us for you to come back. It's a lot of effort. It's not very efficient the first time folks are in. If you were to get down to it on a consultant level, I bet we lose money on most of those transactions based on how long they take.
Right.
And so it's really important, and we really try to ingrain in the staff that we want to like get some sort of positive result. And to address their apprehension falls into different categories. Maybe they think it won't, worried that it won't work. We can address that with the fact that we're really, really open with taking returns and exchanges. So sometimes, especially with these sort of, as you called it, a reactive issue, maybe where somebody's coming in with sort of a need that they're trying to address, maybe the first thing that we suggest or the first thing that they read about and tried, maybe it doesn't work. But often with these things, there might be 2 or 3 different reasons why something's happening. And especially in a case where we don't have a test to test for that, sometimes the test is to try the one thing because it addresses a certain mechanism. And then if that doesn't have a positive effect, then you try another thing that addresses another potential mechanism. And to facilitate that, we'll take returns, et cetera. But then on the other hand, you have the safety side of things. Well, it's not good for our industry to hurt people. That's bad for business. Occasionally when that happens, the media definitely enjoys a good dietary supplement hurting people story. The demonization of ephedra back in the 2005 era, which was somewhat deserved but somewhat undeserved, would be a great example of that. Okay. First of all of these supplements are on something known as the FDA's generally recognized as safe list. This is an official list of compounds, not just dietary supplements, but compounds that are in the United States food supply and that are generally recognized as safe to use. So you've got, a small layer there. And then they are all subject to all of the regulations that food are. So dietary supplements are regulated as food in the United States. The good side of that is that's part of why we have so much access to so many things, such a broad variety that frankly in many countries are not available. So we really have a beautiful array of choice. There are countries, first world countries, where you cannot buy vitamin C over something like, let's say, 250 milligrams, et cetera, where many of the herbs that we sell in the U.S. would not be available or would only be available via prescription. So they're regulated as food. So if you trust your food supply, then from the angle of trusting supplements as food, you can trust them like food. And then there is a certain amount of personal responsibility and due diligence, and we encourage folks to be to be purchasing these products from companies that are doing things like raw material testing and that have the resources to do that. But those are some thoughts that I would bring up in regards to safety, and definitely even have more beyond that.
Okay. Well, and so I'm going to get into. I love this in life right now, and I'm going to ask you some specific questions about, GMO, non-GMO, organic, but how many, if you could pick a percentage in life right now, what's the percentage of people that don't understand genetic modification in food stuff?
Oh, I bet it's really high. If you go into it's probably in the mid 90% range if you're talking about, do they academically understand, what it means.
Even grocery store understanding of it. Do they have a grocery store understanding of it, do you think? Or how much,
I doubt it. I think the knowledge of genetics in the United States is pretty low. Then it's another question of how negative, that is. I try to keep a balanced point of view on GMOs. On one hand, I'm worried about the implications of some of them. On the other hand, as a science guy, there's been some undeniably cool things there that would be hard not to argue that the world food supply hadn't benefited from on some level in certain cases. But it depends on what you want to do with your own body. And then another thought is the question of how do we produce food for the entire planet versus how do we produce food for people that have the resources to get a little bit, for lack of a better word, fancier, with their food. And I don't know all the answers on that, but it's an incredibly complicated subject.
Yeah, no, seriously. I can imagine. I'm
more worried about organic eating, to be honest. Yeah. So right now, I frankly have been reading a lot of the people lately that, and not on purpose, but that would tell you not to be as concerned about genetically modified food. And I think some of the points they make are valid. The question is, there's probably certain things that may not go so well. Maybe we change a certain vegetable genetically, and now, unbeknownst to us, there's another compound that's kind of toxic or something along those lines. Or I'm also very concerned about the legalities of genetic modification, where you have situations where you have large corporations that are suing small farmers where seeds have blown over from a corporate farm that uses genetically modified seed, and then the seed is blown through the air onto like an organic farm, and then there's been scenarios, from what I understand, where the corporations then come and sued the farmer who wasn't intending to grow their seed but ended up having some because of things like it blowing over. So I'm really concerned with sort of world power structure, industrial complex sorts of issues with it. But I'm nervous with anything to be completely like, oh, all GMOs must be bad. Why?
Okay.
And I'm a heck of a lot more concerned about organic eating. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so just, and I'm sure you probably got this embedded in what you're going to say, but I just want to park here for a second. So we're going into the grocery store, folks. Anybody hearing this goes into a grocery store, they make some conscientious decisions. Hey, I'm going to go to the organic aisle. Sure. I'm going to grab something organic. I'm going to get organic too, but honey, make sure it has a non-GMO certification on there. Okay, so I'm going to go get something, and now it's going to say organic, but I'm also looking for the non-GMO. And so in your
I can comment on that.
Yes, and then take it back to the dirt level. What is the dirt growing this? What is that? What's being done there?
Well, good question. So, and this is where kind of I think heading towards with, I think organic is maybe more important than concerned with non-GMO.
Okay.
And frankly, there's so many genetically modified things at this point that if you're going to try to avoid all GMOs, it's going to be a difficult path. That being said, in our store, the vast majority of our products and our supplements are non-GMO. They'll have the non-GMO certified label on most of them, and then others will have, the company will do their own internal non-GMO certification, have their certification instead, or they'll be USDA organic.
What would be the layman's definition of non-GMO?
So simply that it does not contain any ingredients that have been altered through genetic modification. Okay. Now, what it does not mean, and this is where I think we need to get it's important to parse here, is it does not mean that it was grown without pesticides or something like that. You can have a non-GMO product that is soaked in pesticides, soaked in herbicides, every other chemical process known to man applied to it, but it can be non-genetically modified. So, or you can have a genetically modified vegetable that somebody's sitting there growing with, manure and zero herbicides, zero pesticides. So it could be literally as big of a dichotomy as that. So I'm a little bit more worried about what are they actually putting in the dirt. So on the dirt level, organic means that you're not using synthesized, fertilizers. You're not allowed to use sewer sludge, also, for example, with the USDA organic label. Okay. So in the United States, you can actually use sewer sludge as a fertilizer or as a source. So USDA organic does not allow that explicitly. And in a general sense, it excludes herbicides and pesticides. And then to be clear, the USDA organic label also means that it's not does not contain genetically modified ingredients, with a couple exceptions. So on USDA organic, you can be confident that it does not contain genetically modified ingredients unless there are a couple of approved ingredients that do not have a non-GMO alternative. And one of those is soy lecithin. Frankly, I forgot the other one, but soy lecithin is the best example anyways. So soy lecithin is an example of an ingredient that can be genetically modified but make it into a USDA organic product. However, all of the other ingredients that have non-genetically modified variations available have to be that way. So then finally, you can have products that are labeled organic that are also labeled with the official non-GMO certification. And those would take the non-GMO standards that USDA organic sets and they would raise the bar one more notch. And so they would also exclude things like that lecithin that does not have a non-GMO alternative. They just wouldn't let you use that lecithin.
Yeah, because could you do see on packaging, if correct me if I'm wrong, I'm almost positive, you see plenty of non-GMO certifications, but you can't find organic anywhere listed on that package.
Right. So, so personally, I'm, when I'm buying stuff, that's great. I enjoy the reassurance of non-GMO, and I like the idea that the non-GMO hopefully maybe is a little bit more like the old version of it.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't, work myself up into too much of a frenzy. And like I said, because leading to, I'm more concerned about it being organic because I'm more concerned about herbicides, pesticides, hormones, antibiotics. Those are all the things that organic excludes.
Bingo.
Herbicides, pesticides, hormones, antibiotics.
Bingo.
To me, there's a lot more potential for poison there. Whereas the non-GMO is more of a philosophical issue where we're worried that it could be bad, right?
Yeah.
But it's a little different. So I see that. I understand that fear.
Yeah. Interesting.
But,
farmland-wise, you had a great set of speakers. I believe one of them a couple of years ago. I attended one of your seminars, Garden of Life. I believe we had somebody there, and I forget the other young lady. But they were talking about the percentage of USA farms that were converting over to the organic model.
Yeah.
How can you talk to that in the last 5, 10, 15 years? How is that changing? What percentage are we at today of organic farms in the U.S.?
I know it's higher. I do not know the exact number, but I know it's going up every year. And I know that in general, the farming industry, for lack of a better term, is becoming better at it. That the yields that they're getting out of organic farms are higher. And the quality of the crops that they're yielding from organic farms is higher as well. For a while, the organic crops looked pretty rough. And over the last 10 to 20 years, there's been a huge trend in moving towards that. 20 to 40 years ago, we've kind of got the peak of industrialized farming and better living through chemistry type of philosophies, really heavy reliance on sodium, potassium, nitrogen fertilizers. Which the background, dirt level for a moment, you can grow plants with 3 elements: nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, NPK fertilizer it's called. And when we discovered that, bam, we can start growing huge yields, all this stuff, which is cool. However, you can end up having nutritionally less rich crops because you're pulling nutrients out of the soil with each successive generation. The plants will just pull nutrients such as minerals out along with these fertilizers, and eventually there just won't be that many other nutrients in the soil. So you've got this trend where, something like 1975, that would have been huge. 1985, that would have been huge. And then as you move into the mid to late 90s, the idea of organic farming really starts to gather momentum. And you start seeing the beginning of larger store chains such as Whole Foods launching around that time, or back then, Wild Oats, and featuring heavily organic foods. And then there was a big national issue right around the early 2000s regarding organic certifications. There was no set standard for organic. There were certain organizations that came up with their own standards, and then companies could pay, and consumers would say like, "Oh, what's this company or this organic label versus this one?" And then finally, they created a set of national standards that the U.S. Department of Agriculture adopted, called USDA Organic. And I think it's the beginning of that, which let's put somewhere really roughly around 2005. It's the beginning of that I think really starts to make organic farming lucrative on a larger scale. And meanwhile, consumer interest, going up each year with it.
Yes.
So obviously, I think trend-wise, it's been moving from a purely chemistry-based form of farming to this, organic style of farming. And now it's getting really heavily involved with the idea of the microbiome in the human body, which you were talking about, the organisms that live within us and such, and the concept that plants actually interact with microorganisms in the soil, and that those microorganisms play a role in the plants doing what's called fixing nutrients or absorbing nutrients from the soil. So I think that's the big trend now. But I wish I could answer your percentage question, but I know it's higher.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's just fascinating. Even my wife, she's a Young Living essential oil distributor, and we, it's a big part of our life. And, even to understand that, the oils that come from plants are the natural defense mechanisms against disease and to protect the plants of certain things. And so the protection properties, the assistance, quality of life assistance properties that come out of these oils, as long as they're harnessed correctly, are amazing because they're natural to the plant and to sustaining life in the plant. So, when we see the microbiome, the whole, and folks, for those who aren't in the know, it's just basically understanding more about how what's in our guts are affecting what happens throughout the rest of our body and in our brain. And so it's just amazing that of that emphasis. So, it's cool stuff. Well, I really appreciate that. One last question on organic farming. Do you know what the time period is for a farm to flip its soil and convert from a non-organic to an organic?
I believe the number I want to throw out to you is 5 years.
5 years.
And I think that there are a couple of steps in between. And that reminds me, there's a new standard for small local farmers. I think it's something like, I'm going to mess up the name, but it's like certified naturally farmed or something like that. So there's a new certification available for smaller farmers that you'll see now at things like the farmers market locally. Then I know that there's basically a process that's approximately 5 years long where a conventional farm can shift over to being an organic farm. And then there's also some, I know that Garden of Life, we've mentioned a couple times, they have recently been certified in a new stricter organic standard, which unfortunately I can't detail for you, but there's another new higher level.
Interesting, I didn't know. Oh. Yeah. So let's flip. Well, thank you so much for all that. And I hope for those of you who are bored by it, I'm sorry, but so it's stuff that is just, I think it's good for everyone to hear, and even if it just tickles your ears and it makes you wonder. But I mean, I'm telling you, if nothing else, the digestive problems out there are so widespread that if you can't find answers, you've been struggling, you've not been sleeping, you've been, you've been wrestling, your stomach hurts so often. Man, just get in your car, go to a nutrition store in your area, call these folks up on the phone, talk to them. And I mean, there's just a world of remedy. A
lot of stores, ours is like this, but I know others are too. They're not commissioned. So, we take returns. Other stores like us do too. They're not commissioned. And then, use the internet. There's a lot of information out there. You can Google your symptom, et cetera. And there's the summary would be that there's our store's slogan is the place for solutions. And there are a lot of answers in nutrition. And I think that a lot of the questions that should be asked regarding the issues with the human body should be asked. Always a nutritional question should be asked.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's talk about that side of the fence now, because I really have to commend you. I have nothing but the highest respect for the how your business model is set up and how your folks are set up. You're going to notice I didn't bring the
Oh, the logo.
Yeah, I didn't bring my logo with me, but we have a new challenge. Last year we did the 3Y challenge, saying yes to respond to all inquiries, yes to follow up, and yes to follow through. But in 2021, our new challenge is called the AFD, and it's appreciate, focus, and deliver, but deliver on the expectations that you build up. So I love watching stores. I love watching businesses and how they deal with the customer and everything. So folks, here's 3 things I always notice about O'Fallon Nutrition, every experience with it. And the inclusion challenge is our way of saying and inviting people to invite the customer, include them in your business model, because that infuses, repeat business. Just like you said, you're more interested in that. You're more interested in that second purchase than the first. You want a happy customer to come back. Right. So you've got, what do you do to include the customer in and diffuse the repeat and referral business, and allow you to have a family type of feeling in it. So I get that very much from your store. Mm-hmm. But here's what I notice when I walk in. Every time I've walked in since 2007. I'm always greeted. Hello. Now, granted,
Sure.
it's a small store format, but
Sure.
hello, how you doing? And now it's, hello, Jeff, how you doing? Great. How you doing, everybody? And I call everybody by name because we know them.
That's official.
That's official. Yes. Second thing is they always ask, is there anything we can do to help you?
Sure.
And so they always ask that, which to me is the second letter, AFD. So you appreciate somebody, you walk in, but you're focusing on me. And if I say, yes, I do need help, great. They come over, and then I just love, and I don't know how you do this, but I just love the fact that your personnel have a knowledge and an understanding of all that. And I look at all these bottles and these boxes and stuff, and how do they know about all this? But, Amanda has been nothing short of phenomenal over the years, just knowing all that. I know she's now in a managerial capacity with you, which is well-deserved. She's great. Tammy, Evelyn, Cassie, Summer, they all have that ability to engage and talk about that. But it's just, I watch the customer service angle. And, I have to give you A+. Is this deliberate? Where did you learn about it?
It's really deliberate, and it's a mix of my own philosophy of almost experiences that I've had in the past and sort of how I prefer to be treated in a retail environment. It's a mix of that. It's a mix of certain business books I've read. I know you're into Dale Carnegie, et cetera, and I'm familiar with him, but I haven't read the book. But I've read Franklin Covey and others right along those lines.
Sure.
And at the same time, I've always been fascinated by high service establishments like fancy restaurants or the Ritz-Carlton. We actually had a big sort of revamp of our customer service approach about a year and a half ago. We're kind of like an upgrade and a refocusing. And one of the things we did is I modeled certain parts of our training after the Ritz-Carlton.
No kidding.
Or Carlton, excuse me, which was modeled after one of my friends who worked there 20 years ago, detailing to me their training.
No kidding. I did not know that.
Yeah. But they had certain characteristics, such as the fact that they were allowed to correct an issue for a guest of the hotel up to a certain amount of, at the Ritz, it's something insane, like up to a $2,000 problem. Any staff member down to the bellhop level or whatnot can just snap their fingers and make a decision. So our staff members can make a decision that costs up to, I think it's $200 without intervention if they need to, as an example. Yes, they're trained to greet. They're trained to ask if they can help find something, but then they're also trained to leave the person alone if they say no.
That's correct.
We're very aware that certain consumers want to be helped and other consumers in our store don't, or literally prefer to be left alone. And so we actually try to incorporate both angles of that into our training. So it's definitely an ongoing process, but it's really important to me. I pay a lot of attention to how I get treated in other retail.
It's recognizable. I mean,
you.
Absolutely. And I was going to include the non-engagement portion in my explanation because I've realized that, hey, Jeff, is there anything we can do for you? No, not right now. And nothing more said. And they go about their business. And then, of course, hey, Amanda, I can't find this. And you're like in the sea of now bottles and this orange and white. You're like, where is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but no, phenomenal. I'm glad. So the Ritz-Carlton, I got to get my hands on this and take a peek at it because that's up my alley just to learn about it.
Yeah, we actually have a training manual, and Amanda put this together for. I mean, I was sort of identifying the things I wanted, and then she made it. But sometime I'll have to actually physically show it to you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. But it's really important to us. We actually want to have a high-end experience. We train our staff that we are the high-end health food store, that people should have the most premium vitamin health food store type experience at our store.
Right.
And that's where things like the environment, like the music comes into play, or we'll probably be doing some remodeling soon, but we just got new lights last month that are really cool. So I'm going in a few circles, but I just think the experience in the store is critical. Oh, and music as well. So it's part of the environment.
We talked about that before the show. I love your music choices. Yes, temperature. So you said a word there that is so central to everything we do, and it's called the experience. So you just mentioned it there.
Yes.
So it's the customer experience, and you set the tone, and you set a very favorable customer experience. You really do, and that to me. I think that's a lot of times where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
In business, because we overlook that experience factor.
Yeah. And a lot of it just comes to me being kind of anal myself and persnickety to some degree, and sort of measuring what we're doing against certain experiences that I had in the past. And one being that my grandmother that lived in Omaha, I lived in different places growing up, and at some points had money and other points didn't. And lived in a mobile home park in Montana and got school lunch for free at one point. But meanwhile, I'd go visit my grandma in Omaha, who was more well off, and she would take me to a store called Krug's, Men and Boys Clothes in Omaha. And there was a guy named Dave, and my name's Dave, but there was a guy named Dave there, always was wearing some sort of, sport coat and perfectly groomed, etc. And he would take my little chubby 11-year-old self around, buying skateboard T-shirts and stuff like that. And, once a year I'd go there and Grandma would buy my clothes. And that's one of the experiences that I actually sort of
Modeled
measure
after?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It stuck with you.
It was always so nice. So we don't want people to feel sold to. We don't want them to feel pressured.
Yeah.
We want them to feel relaxed. We want them to think it's fun. We want them to find it interesting, if not fascinating. Yeah. To some extent, there's a little bit of, we tell our staff that 10 or 15% of what we do is a church of nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Or a museum of nutrition.
Well, so here's another interesting thing. So, in my little home, so let's say my wife's been, going to your store since 2005, 2004.
Sure.
I've been going since 2007. Yeah. I can't tell you, and I'm not talking about a dozen, I'm talking about dozens of times. I can't tell you how many dozens of times over the years I overhear my wife having a conversation. It's on the phone, it's in person, it's with us at a dinner table, whatever, about O'Fallon Nutrition. So here, going back to what we're talking about, repeat and referral business, right? Oh, yeah. There's this embedded referralness. My wife's on the phone, we're at a barbecue, we're out with a couple, right? And we're talking about some of these things. Oh, what do? Oh, you go to O'Fallon Nutrition. And here's what it always dovetails at the end of that. They're so nice over there.
Sure.
And, so not only are you getting referral recommendations and referral business because of the way you've treated people, but, it's recognizable and it's recognizable to the point that my wife would call it out. Wow. And I, same thing on me, they're so nice over there. And, I would always say, oh yeah, gosh, if you go in there, ask for Tammy or ask for Evelyn. We did a lot with Evelyn, or, ask for Amanda. Sure. But it's always, that's the feeling that's tagged along to the explanation of the store. So what a great lesson for any store, be it a restaurant, whatever you do, to have that kind of attitude towards customer service that leads to organic referrals. Right. And you're a solution-based operator. So,
So there's a lot of trust involved. So we try to build it organically. This is all like kind of do the right stuff, and some of that will work itself out. In the beginning of the store, I definitely used to have this idea that if we just did things well, tried hard, executed well, probably even more than try hard, that the money would sort of take care of itself in the long run. And it did. There was we lost money on tax returns for 4 or 5 years in a row before we made money. But sort of laying that groundwork, ended up working out. Yeah. And I would say regarding the niceness or something that being that this is a business podcast, and what I would want to communicate to other business folks is that I think a big part of the reason our staff can be organically nice is that we try really hard to be nice to them. And when I did have jobs in high school and whatnot growing up and in college, and I had a number of jobs. I've been a waiter, I've worked in warehouses, et cetera, and a number of others. A lot of those jobs were awful, or they had a number of characteristics that were awful. And so I'm very concerned that there's nothing awful about working for us. Yeah. And then I try to go up from there. Well, what's yucky? Let's fix that. What's unpleasant? Let's fix that. Et cetera. So I think it helps them to in an organic sense, not to overuse the word, actually be in a good mood.
Yeah. So you're constantly revising. You're looking. How do you as business owners, you and your wife, how do you look at the business and go, hey, we need to revise this, honey. We need to treat the people this way instead of that. And how do you make that revision? How do you find that out?
I think anywhere there's kind of a friction point is something to look at anywhere where you're getting the sense that folks aren't happy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily cater to them I hate to think of this, but cater to staff as if they're spoiled children or something like that. But it's, first of all, we treat people like adults. We give as much autonomy as we can. The training or guidelines and such, greet the customer when they come in, wait a moment, and then a moment later ask them if they need help, et cetera. But we don't necessarily completely plant scripts into them. I could see how that would work in certain situations.
Right.
But in ours, it allows it to be more
personal.
Yeah,
I mean, you need that personal.
Right.
You want that personal connection to the consultant who's talking to you,
right?
Because they are consultants in your health,
right?
They're
right.
You're making decisions that hopefully are going to alter your condition and give you the result you want. So it's
and we're not overseeing them in a way. Their performance is measured over the long term, sort of more vaguely, like do we get positive customer feedback on them, that sort of thing. But they're not being measured in sales per hour. They're not being measured in whether or not they succeeded in selling at all. For example, a lot of the time a new customer comes in, has a big kind of exchange with our staff and doesn't buy anything, or leaves with a book, or leaves with a printout from our HyperHealth software that's info on their condition. But often that person comes back. And so something that we've become aware of. So the point being is our staff is not pressured in any way that could possibly result in them, being more aggressive with a customer than they ought to be.
Yeah, well, listen, and again, that apprehension factor, I sense it in the store. It's people's health. They're sitting at their kitchen table going, okay, do I pay a doctor $150 for this visit, or do I go down to a Fallon Nutrition? And, the arguments across the kitchen table are, well, honey, if you pay $150 to the doctor, they're only going to give you some type of medication that, and I'm not bad-mouthing Big Pharma, but the Big Pharma is behind, and, it's not going to help you. And so there's this wrestling match in you, and you're apprehensive because sometimes the medical community says, no, we have the answers for you, and you're afraid to step off that ledge. And so I hear it in there. So you need that connection to somebody. Again, going back to the inclusion challenge, that you're appreciating them. Whether you know it or not, that consultant visit in the aisle where you're talking to someone for 20 minutes and they leave with just a printout or leave with a book. You've done something in that 20 minutes. You've created a connection where you said, hey, we want you to feel welcome here. We want to show you that we appreciate your condition. We understand you. We're going to hear you out and be more consultative versus sales oriented. And let me tell you, I can tell you firsthand, you walk out of your store understanding that subliminally. You may not articulate it in a car ride home, but you're understanding it subliminally that, that person really took the time to listen. Right. And I give credence to that. And look, if I recall, I was trying to remember my first purchase with you guys, but I want to say I left without anything in my hand the first time.
You may have.
Because I was like, honey, I don't know about this.
Right.
I just don't know. She goes, well, you want to wrestle? Well,
step one, we kind of got to get some trust.
Yeah.
And even a little buy-in, too, because if somebody is really apprehensive, they can almost reverse placebo effect themselves. We all know about the placebo effect, but I'm also convinced there's a reverse placebo effect, which is where the person is so convinced that the thing's not going to work. And I'm sure this happens with some medications, too, where occasionally they'll talk themselves out of something that worked.
I could believe it.
But obviously there's times where things genuinely don't work too. But what my point being is that the customer has to psychologically be a little bit ready. And sometimes you have folks that come in to purchase something for somebody else, and that other person, sometimes they're not there because they're so against the idea that they refuse to come or whatnot. Other times they're not there because they're just not there.
Right.
But I'm hesitant to even try to push something as a suggestion in that situation because the other person doesn't want it.
Yeah.
At that point, they're not ready for it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
To speak. So perhaps when we talked the first time, it may have part of the goal on my end may have been to get you to being open in order to give
Yeah,
things
and
a
I
fair
can't remember
shot.
the outcome. I want to say I left without something.
I totally believe it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
honestly, that's something that would happen occasionally or fairly often, and we were okay with it because we felt like it circled back for us, and that does come back to with the staff. They genuinely want to help. We try to hire folks who seem to give off that sense to us, who have some factor of nutrition as a special interest themselves. Usually they're not always originally into everything, but there's something that pulls them in. And but they are all genuinely folks over the years who feel that nutrition and even the concept of wellness is critical, to a good life.
Yeah.
And they want to share that idea with other folks.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, another thing your store does great, and I love this, and it's part of my mantra for sure. You know, matter of fact, we end every podcast, and we will through episode 100. One of the things we say is get to the customer before they get to you. And I had the pleasure of being in charge of customer service nationally for a couple different companies, and I always said my 2 golden rules were get to the customer before they get to you. And always tell the customer what they deserve to hear. Not what you want them to hear or what they want to hear, but what they deserve to hear. And so your store does something, does something, maybe a chain someday. Very good.
Hope so.
But
we had to perfect this one.
Well, you do.
I'll tell you what, I'll shoot this in. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and honest to gosh, the reason that we haven't done one yet or whatnot is that we're still polishing this.
All right.
We're
Well, I
almost,
love it.
But it is still
Almost
being
there.
polished.
Well, and so with your polishing, don't forego your attitude towards get to the customer before they get to you. Because here's what happens.
I want to hear this.
So on a back order, you go in, you say, okay, you're running a special.
Oh, this is a nightmare for us.
You're running a special,
He's hitting us in our biggest vulnerability.
But you handle it well, and here's what happens. So, you go in and there's a special going for if you buy 3 bottles of this, you get 33% off each bottle, but you have to buy 3 or whatever. So, inevitably you have a back order here and there. But here's the thing I love about your store, is that you guys always initiate the call when it comes in. You write it down, you plug it in, and you are the one alerting me to it's in. I'm not the one that goes, boy, it's been 4 weeks. Hey, do you guys have that yet? Oh, yeah, it's here. Come on down and pick it up whenever you want.
Sure. And
I think so many businesses forget that model. And I was just giving a suggestion the other day, but just in a restaurant, if I had one golden rule in a restaurant, if I owned it, I would just say, get to the filling up the water glass before they ask to you, because that sets the perception in the whole service experience. Is like, you might not do anything.
When I was a waiter, that was a big deal.
Right. Yes. But yet, without them asking, so that they think. And so I had a gentleman, I had a couple on a few weeks ago that was Dawn and David, G and Betty, and they own 4 marinas in New Jersey. And I said, what's the most favorite thing out of my book that you like? And he said, I love your attitude of saying, get to the customer before they get to you. He said, because in our business, let's say that somebody's having a boat repair done with us. And they live in central New Jersey, and now they want to hop in a car and drive an hour and a half because we told them their boat would be ready to this, that, or the other. To drive an hour and a half. Oh, man. Right, to get in your boat, and you think you're going to maybe go out sailing that weekend.
You're excited.
And the boat's not done. Ugh. And his angle is, at their kitchen table, whatever, in their conversations, they're thinking, hey, we might want to go to Six Flags. We might want to do something else instead. And if you make me drive down there and I go through your front door and I find out that my boat's not fixed, what the heck? You guys couldn't have called me and told me it's not fixed? Right. And he said, we pride ourselves on making that phone call and making sure that person has the ability to rejuggle their schedule rather than hopping in the car and driving down there. So I just think it's such a miss today that if we put customers in the position where they have to backtrack, and I call it backtrack, and they have to backtrack and think about, oh, man, I ordered that. I wanted to know about that. When it was going to come in, nobody called me. And now they have to pester you. They have to call you. They have to backtrack. I think you're just hurting yourself.
Yes, I agree. I'm hyper concerned about this issue. I have been the whole time. And in fact, this year, we're going to really make a concerted effort to address certain angles of it. every year made efforts to polish certain aspects of it. And these, in summary for folks listening, with a nutrition store like ours, and ours that really does specialize in dietary supplements, vitamins, herbs, et cetera, there's something like 4,000 products approximately in our little 2,000 square foot store. And a lot of these have supply issues beyond what normal industries have. Like there's only so much of this crop grown, and then it was talked about on a TV show, or this other thing failed raw material testing, or and combined with a store like ours is literally guessing how many units are going to sell.
Right.
But that means, so I always want that side to improve. This year with COVID, it's not improved. It's been harder to get stuff, but we've been really assertive about trying and swapping vendors to other good vendors, and et cetera. But let me kind of get to your point. Yeah. We have this whole process. They fill out a card that's an index card with their name and the number of the product. We have all sorts of little catches for that, because I'm concerned about us, losing the customer right then when we don't have it. So there's a little discount associated with it. So already if you're hassled and we don't have it and we're filling out this card, I feel like there's a negative thing in the customer's head. So I want to counteract that with a small positive, which is like an I'm sorry. So they get this little discount associated with it. And then this year, what we implemented to take that up a notch is free shipping of the item if we don't have it. And so they get that option. Nice. It's interesting. A lot of people still prefer to pick it up, but they actually can just say, yeah, just send it to me and we will send it to them for free when we get it. And then, like you said, just the basic process of actually calling folks. Right. There's a dedicated place in the back of the store where these products are stored with their index cards. Visually, we're looking at them at least a couple times a week, right. And in case we need to call back or whatnot. But then it serves our purposes because it helps us complete the sale, sure. and it helps us try to avoid the tragedy of losing sure. the customer permanently. Sure. And I really actually carry a fair amount of paranoia over the results of these out of stocks and then et cetera. So everything you're seeing as far as those processes revolves around my concern that we're going to give, that the customer's going to drop us, that they're going to punish us by dropping us for not having it.
Well, so if you're in the O'Fallon, St. Charles area, St. Charles County area here, I mean, let me, you're not paying me, I'm not paying you to be here. So I'm talking straight here. In 13 years, if you're polishing what I already consider to be good, kudos to you, because in 13 years, I'm going to say your percentage rate of calling me about back orders is either 100% or it's 99 or 98. Good. I mean, I can't think of a time when we scratch our head going, hey, did that ever come in? Let's call him. Maybe, but I think it's always, I'm on a business trip or something. I'll see you, I didn't get it to answer the call, and there it is, that, hey, your thing's in, whatever it may be. So, if you're polishing that, you're already doing a great job. So that just goes to show you,
we feel like we already messed up when we're at that point. Yeah. And even if we didn't, because often we didn't, something else did, but we know that the customer, we're the one that's getting the perception of the mess up. Yeah, interesting. And I don't want that.
What would, if you had to pick one overarching great piece of advice to just throw out to a young entrepreneur, what would you say that advice would be?
Oh, goodness. It would be a combination of just do it, combined with, you got to execute on some level, at least your core things, and you've got to refine things over time. I look at companies like Porsche that, refines things over time, et cetera, polishes things. But yeah, you've got to execute, but you've also got to just do it, and you need to continuously improve. There's that, I heard you use a similar phrase on one of your podcasts, but constant and never-ending improvement.
Yeah, continuous improvement. Yes, I mean one of the chapters in my book, I have 8 chapters, 8 core chapters. The 8th chapter is improvement, and that's what it is. And it's all about, it's all about that fact that we can never be complacent. Complacency breeds mediocrity. If we become comfortable where we are, we have to realize that, our competition in some cases is getting better.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to open up, to what you're doing humbly, but more important, look at it through the customer lens, and let the customer lens tell you what you're seeing. So one of the
because you're solving their need. Yes.
One of the fantastic, I do a little for Chambers of Commerce. I have I have a menu of 5 speaking events, and one of them is called the Customer Service MVP, or the Customer Feedback MVP rather. And who's the most valuable player in customer feedback? It's you and me as business owners. And one of my suggestions is to go someplace where it's tranquil, turn off all technology, and think about your business through the customer lens, and just the quietness and the stillness of.
That's a good idea.
And you know what? You end up discovering so many remedies to your, you end up uncovering so many complaints and so many things to fix that, you never paid for a focus group. You never did a monkey,
Sure.
What's that called? A monkey chimp survey. I forget what it's called, but it's
sure.
Yeah. But you've never even gone out and done one of these things,
Right.
but just the eye contact, the eye rolls, the posture, the what they said to you, go, wow, I never thought about when they said that they really meant they were upset.
Yes.
And you can just, and so that reflection, it's just a great opportunity. And we all have so many things we can shore up about the way we do business. And it's, we think we're doing everything right. And,
Sure.
Well,
your point is that, I almost would have said this if I had thought, but you really got to care about the customer. And I think that's what at least has been a key to us being successful.
Yeah.
You really got to care about that customer, and you almost have to be a little bit, I'm always worried, almost paranoid that they're not pleased enough.
Yeah.
And if you kind of keep coming from that perspective, it's almost like I feel like then maybe I'll do just good enough,
So you're whittling away at the experience from all different little angles of your.
And sometimes we take a step back, like with the COVID situation or something. But yes, it's the experience, and then then the efficacy of what we do. Since what we do has an efficacy component, does it work? That kind of thing.
Yep.
We train a staff along with those other things we talked about. That when folks do come to us with one of those issues that they want addressed, I want to feel something different, that it's really important that we try to connect them to a product that's actually going to have a tangible effect, even to the extent that we'll, train staff. Yes, you may actually know an underlying thing that needs to be addressed in the long term for that issue, but it's not going to make them feel different now.
Yeah.
Educate them about that, familiarize them with that. Maybe if you do some fish oil a year from now, you might feel. But meanwhile, we might have another solution that falls within the realm of nutrition that might have more of a noticeable, tangible effect now. And, that's part of what we'll train them is that we need to actually, deliver.
Yeah. Excellent. No, it's all noticeable. I'm glad to kind of hear some of the, thinking behind it all, but it makes sense. So, one last question, business wise, and then we'll kind of sum it up. But we're in a year that has been like no other. What has the pandemic taught you about your products, your store? What have you learned from it that you have taken and changed business?
Our products are essential to life. That's what I think. That's what the pandemic has shown. You have a lot of medical professionals that are publicly stating that they're taking dietary supplements right now. Dr. Anthony Fauci is a bit of a controversial figure at the moment, but he has publicly stated that he's taking dietary supplements. I believe that includes vitamin D, and if I'm not mistaken, zinc, as well as some others. The research that is building up on certain dietary supplements, even specifically related to this year, is really impressive. We have kept our mouths shut as a business. We have not been promoting any of these things. We're just trying to really walk the fine line of not being accused of promoting anything inappropriately, et cetera. But we don't even have to, because the research is building up, and there are entire countries, such as China, that are incorporating things like vitamin C into their, official regimens. So I think it's showing something that folks like I have believed and known that other folks have not taken quite as seriously, which is that in some cases this can literally become life or death. And that just using the really mainstream accepted concept research on vitamin D right now. There's a lot of research that I've seen that's showing that just based on vitamin D levels alone, you have folks with positive COVID results, and you have cohorts with low vitamin D levels that are ending up in the ICU, and cohorts with higher vitamin D levels that aren't, et cetera. And then don't even get me started on zinc, but I would encourage everybody to research that right now. I mean, so it's literally life or death. I couldn't say it any more seriously. My supplements are very important to me right now. There are certain things that I'm not allowing myself to run out of. There's certain things that we haven't allowed our store to run out of. That we've gone to pretty big lengths in certain cases to have zinc or vitamin D on the shelves at certain points. And depending on how this winter goes, I am anticipating nationwide, worldwide shortages in certain nutrients, because unlike the spring, now a lot more research is built up, and it's pretty impressive. And so you've got a lot of folks that never considered vitamins before that are talking about zinc and vitamin D and quercetin. We've been selling quercetin since 2002. The folks use it as an alternative to antihistamines to support a balanced histamine response. And turns out all sorts of interesting things related to research regarding COVID with it. I don't know. So I could sit here, I'm sorry to sit here and ramble. It's like, I just want to impress upon everybody that ultra important, the science isn't lying. There's a lot of it. You can hop on to Google or a big internet forum. I'm a big advocate of internet forums as a possible other source of information, because you get people arguing with each other, and I find that it almost elevates the discourse. But boy, is it important, right?
Yeah, no, I listen. C, D, E. I mean, gosh, these have been, DHEA. I mean, these are things, I've been taking, for prostate saw palmetto.
Sure.
I mean, I've been taking this, buying this from your store for years. I just recently the only change I made was add zinc to my regimen. And, so I'm a firm believer. I'm also, like the fact that this seems to, the respiratory part of it, it seems to have at least initially parked itself in the form of respiratory issues. And so those initially back in March and April, you heard that those people had good, cardiovascular daily regimens would be insulated from getting it. And so I've always been a big runner. So, I've not gotten it. And, so I don't know if that's, if all those things are reasons why, but hey,
well, you're putting that kind of wellness constellation together, and your bubble of immunity that it has to penetrate is significantly maybe more substantial than somebody else's. And it's each of these things adds another layer, whether it's the bit of support from the mast layer, or by not being deficient in zinc, or not being deficient in D, or not being underslept.
Right. Oh, sleep. I mean, how many? Amazing.
I lost some weight this year, because I was saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, that's important. And every day I take supplements that support oxygenation. So that's another angle that folks can look into, are whether or not they want to consider using things that might support their body. If they were exposed. And I'll leave with this. There's something known as the Merrick COVID protocol that folks can Google, that was developed by Eastern Virginia Medical School. That's one example of protocols out there that are associated with university that also incorporates supplements.
Interesting. Well, I tell you, it's a wellness, nutrition, supplements, and one of the real reasons I wanted to do this show is just to blend those attitudes in with your story, because I've admired your store, and so I wanted to be able to highlight it. But I go back to a 2007 lunch date I had with a gentleman who was he was a heart surgeon out of Atlanta, and he was looking at making some apparel, and I was in the private label apparel business back then. And during lunch, he told us a disheartening story in 2007 that, when he went to apply for his job, and he explained the whole process of, going through his internship and everything. And it basically, if I remembered it correctly, he was done with everything at age 33. At age 40, he would pay off his all his $400,000 worth of, loans were paid off. And then from 40 to 60 was when he made money. And I don't think he could even do heart surgery after 60, if I remember correctly.
Sure.
I'm not sure. There was some age.
There is a rule about that.
But he was saying that in 2007, the number of applicants I think there were 2,200 heart surgeons back then, and the number of applicants per, job was 0.5. And that a lot of, due to the liability issues and so forth, a lot of doctors have, opted to go to the cosmetic venues, to go to other venues of,
Sure.
The medical community to pursue their careers. Many of the good doctors who would normally have come here came from other countries.
Sure.
Now, when they didn't have the liability issues in places like India and places like Pakistan or wherever, they could go back to their villages and towns and work. And at the age 60, he was telling us that, net, the mathematics would equate. So a lot of these people would say, well, you know what? I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to get schooled here. I'm going to go back there. And so the pool of heart surgeons per heart surgeon, now you're at 0.5 applicants versus 7 for every job. And then, of course, a lot of those practices, most of them have closed now become enveloped into the hospitals. So they become parts of the hospitals. But what he ended up at that lunch in 2007 cautioning us to do, and alerting us to do, was to adopt a personal responsibility for our own wellness and health and our understanding of nutrition and our understanding of self-preservation, self-health. Sure. Because he said, it's not too far-fetched. I mean, I don't know where this is going, but 100 years ago, you're doing open heart surgery from a video on TV, and having your wife, anesthetize you. He's being facetious, but where is this going? We don't know. So now, take stock. Yeah. And so at that particular lunch, it was right around the time I had gone in and started getting digestive enzymes with you.
Oh, sure.
And the probiotics, and so it was just, I was all ears, and I'm like, holy moly, I can't believe that I'm hearing this guy say this.
Yes.
And, I better take heed. So, yeah, we've done nothing at our house but become more and more and more educated, more and more saturated. And I give my wife tremendous credit. Monica has done a phenomenal job understanding all that. And I'm so thankful because she sets the tone in our house for
sure. Well, I mean, it's so important because, I turned 40 a few months ago back in February. And so like the realities of aging, are there, and sort of life and all that stuff. And you're like, wow, this isn't that long, and I don't understand why people wouldn't want to, improve and prolong their quality of life. And I think that a lot of folks believe that it's not possible, or it's baloney. And it really is. Oh, yeah. I've gone up and down in health over the years, and without getting into it, every time I've gotten back up and gotten healthy again, it's basically worked in the sense that, I felt better and problems went away and stuff like that, or I've looked younger or whatnot. And I just think it's such an important concept that we actually can play a role in our health. I think that's what we're both getting at here, and what that doctor was saying. And there's an old mindset that, how you age is how you age, and that's just, set in stone. And of course we all age, and of course there's genetics, but there's epigenetics too, and epigenetics are the study of, the alteration of your genes by the environment. And so what we can do is we can improve our environment. And environment even includes the food we eat and stuff when we talk about it in that sense.
Yeah. Interesting.
Gosh, I mean, you look good, you're healthy, you got energy, right?
Right.
And you probably see some other contemporaries where you can tell they didn't take care of themselves, and they've got different outcomes. And then you've probably seen some other folks that have taken great care of themselves. You're like, wow, I want to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 62, and I have a lot of people saying, hey, you look, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. You look good. What do you do? Well, and I don't drink. I haven't been recovered alcoholic, so I haven't drank since 32 years. So that helps because when you don't drink and smoke, you don't just dry out.
Well, you're not oxidizing as much. So even like you're not, those increase inflammation, they increase oxidation. Right. You're not doing that to yourself.
Yeah. No, it's been an amazing run. So yeah. And again, one of the reasons I really love this show, and thank you so much, is that yes, I do want to just coming out of this COVID. We've got to understand that our health is really in our hands in so many ways and what we can do about it. And yeah, I'm a believer in supplements. I'm a believer in understanding, all this and making an effort to be conscientious about these decisions.
Because I'll throw in a comment. We don't even have time for it. But yeah, germs can make us sick. I believe in the idea that, there's contagion. But we all know that sometimes people get exposed to a cold or something and they get it or not, et cetera. And so can we have 100% control over that?
Right.
No. Right. But we can have some influence on it. And that's the idea that, take all the precautions, disinfect, use hand sanitizers, masks, et cetera. However, be aware that you've got a role to play in the overall sort of health of your body, and that directly relates to the responsiveness of your immune system, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
There's the whole whether or not you're exposed, et cetera, and, we want to take precautions there. But on the other hand, all of us, most of us, inevitably are going to be exposed. And then it's, what does our body do at that point?
Right. Yeah, well said. Well, listen, it's been great. I want everybody to be able to get to now, whether they want going to get in touch with you online and order something and have it shipped, or whether they're going to come into your store. Can you give us all the social media
here's
parameters?
All the good stuff.
Yeah,
It's O'Fallon Nutrition is the name of the store. O'FallonNutrition.com is the website. Our main email address is info@O'FallonNutrition.com. Our phone number is 636-240-5283. And we have a very big active Facebook page. We have an Instagram account. Summer is now the new manager of that. It was Tammy, but she retired. Summer's super pumped up and having a lot of fun with it.
Good.
So Instagram, Facebook, O'FallonNutrition.com. And we do free shipping for orders over $50. And we do take phone orders, especially with COVID. We've been doing curbside as well as in-store service. And so you can shop with us any way you're comfortable. You can call us. We can ship stuff for free. You can do curbside. You can walk in, do the whole mask interaction thing. And we're happy to meet you wherever you're at. And we love questions. Nothing's too dumb. And no angle is too weird to start at. And in a nutshell, I think anything physical can be influenced by nutrition. So if you're wondering whether maybe you can address something, give us a call, give us a shot, and meanwhile, maybe Google your issue and Google that phrase with the word supplements and see what happens.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. And and I'm so glad to hear you are a rocker. And your store chain is great. Your store is great.
You were saying you might be rocking out in your car if you didn't notice somebody driving by on one of your podcasts.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought of myself.
That's okay. Good. So we have a Lost in the Shuffle track. You're well familiar. What is your Lost in the Shuffle track pick for today?
I think today I was going to maybe say Jump with Van Halen, but let's do Free Will with Rush. Because I think it maybe even is more applicable to what we're talking about today. And I think that's a song that could be interpreted a lot of ways. However, on a fundamental level, I think it relates to our idea that we can have some influence over our health and, on a greater level, influence over everything that you want to have positive effects with. Let's go with Free Will by Rush.
Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I want to say 2016 or 17. One of the greatest three-man ensembles out there ever.
So much sound.
Neil Peart, obviously, we just lost him recently. But one of the best drummers, one of the most unique drummers we'll ever have run across in the rock and roll genre. And so for a three-man band, they really Canadians, I believe.
Right,
so,
Canadians.
Yeah.
And I love the mathematical side of Rush. So I think also with this, part of the reason I think I feel drawn to Rush is they were such a technical band.
Correct.
Did things with time signatures and such. And underneath it, I think underneath the surface, I wish I understood it even better, but nutrition and biochemistry are math. And so
Interesting.
there's some sort of connection there.
That is so cool. Well, we'll put the so you'll see the little icon. So when you're looking at if you're YouTube, you look up in the upper right hand corner, and you'll see right above Dave's head, you'll see the little indication there where you can click on, and you'll get a video pop up of Free Will by Rush. So, well, listen, thank you so much, and we really appreciate you coming in. Say hello to Diana.
Thank you.
We love your store. Say hello to all the folks at the store, and folks, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast and this season. This is episode 63, so we'll start 2021 with episode 64.
I'm a subscriber.
All right.
I think I got a lot of things to learn. I want to pick up some more tools.
I love it. Well, we look forward to it. And hey, as we sign off today, as we always say, remember, respond always, follow up, follow through, get to the customer before they get to you. You've heard from David today. Customer perception is customer reality, and it is. And then join us for next year, 2021. We're going to do the Inclusion Challenge, which is Appreciate, Focus, and Deliver. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Be safe. We'll see you in 2021.